December 6, 1917. In the bustling port city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, the morning sun rose over a harbor teeming with activity. World War I was raging in Europe, and Halifax had become a critical wartime hub, the main departure point for convoys of troops and supplies heading across the Atlantic. The city was alive with the energy of war, its streets filled with soldiers, sailors, and workers. But no one, absolutely no one, could have imagined the catastrophe that was about to unfold. This is the story of the Halifax explosion, the largest man-made blast before the atomic age. Let's set the scene. Here's a map of Halifax Harbor in 1917. The harbor is long and narrow, with a tight channel called the Narrows connecting the outer harbor to an inner basin called the Bedford Basin. This geography was both a blessing and a curse. The Bedford Basin was a perfect, protected area to assemble massive convoys, safe from German U-boats that lurked in the open ocean. But the Narrows, the only way in and out, was a bottleneck. Navigation required skill and precision, especially with the heavy wartime traffic. On the morning of December 6, two ships were on a collision course, both literally and figuratively. The first was the SS IMO, a Norwegian relief ship heading to Belgium with supplies. It was leaving the Bedford Basin and laid an end riding high in the water, making it difficult to steer. The second was the SS Mont Blanc, a French cargo ship arriving from New York. The Mont Blanc was entering the harbor, heading for the Bedford Basin to join a convoy. But the Mont Blanc was carrying a secret, deadly cargo. Its holds were packed with over 2,900 tons of high explosives. We're talking picric acid, TNT, and gun cotton. Its decks were lined with barrels of benzol, a highly flammable fuel. The Mont Blanc was, in essence, a massive floating bomb. Around 8:45 a.m., these two ships met in the Narrows. A series of confusing signals, misunderstood maneuvers, and a fatal breakdown in maritime protocol led to disaster. The IMO, trying to pass another vessel, veered into the path of the Mont Blanc. The Mont Blanc's pilot tried to avoid a collision, but it was too late. The IMO struck the Mont Blanc's bow on the starboard side. The impact itself wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to topple the barrels of benzol on deck. They spilled and ignited, creating an immediate, terrifying fire. The crew of the Mont Blanc knew exactly what was on board. They knew the fire was a death sentence for the city. They immediately abandoned ship, rowing frantically for the Dartmouth shore on the other side of the harbor, screaming warnings about the explosives. But their cries were in French, and few on the Halifax side understood. Onlookers gathered at the waterfront, drawn by the spectacle of the burning ship. Children watched from their windows, mesmerized by the strange, beautiful flames. They had no idea they were looking at their own doom. The burning, abandoned Mont Blanc drifted towards Pier 6 on the Halifax waterfront, in the heart of the industrial Richmond district. The city's fire department raced to the scene. Fire engine Patricia, the city's first motorized fire truck, arrived, and firefighters prepared to douse the blaze from the pier. At the same time, a railway dispatcher named Vince Coleman at the nearby train station learned of the danger. He had started to flee but remembered an incoming passenger train with hundreds of people was due to arrive any minute. He ran back to his telegraph key and tapped out a frantic message, "Hold up the train. Ammunition ship afire in harbor making for Pier 6 and will explode. Guess this will be my last message. Goodbye, boys." His message was received, and the train was stopped. Vince Coleman saved hundreds of lives, but he never left his post. At precisely 9 hours 4 minutes and 35 seconds a.m., the SS Mont Blanc exploded. The force was unimaginable. It was an instantaneous, violent release of energy equivalent to 2.9 kilotons of TNT. A blinding white flash was followed by a deafening roar. The ship was vaporized in an instant. A massive fireball shot over a mile into the sky, carrying with it a mushroom cloud of smoke and debris. A powerful pressure wave radiated outwards at supersonic speeds, leveling everything in its path. The Richmond district, the working-class neighborhood closest to the blast, was completely obliterated. Homes, factories, and churches were flattened as if they were made of paper. The blast wave shattered windows up to 50 miles away. An anchor shank from the Mont Blanc, weighing half a ton, was thrown over 2 miles, landing in the woods. The explosion was so powerful it created a tsunami in the harbor. The water receded, exposing the harbor floor, and then rushed back in as a massive wave, over 50 feet high in some places. It swept the shore, dragging people, debris, and wreckage back into the harbor. The human cost was staggering. In a fraction of a second, nearly 2,000 people were killed. An estimated 9,000 more were injured, many of them horrifically. Hundreds were blinded by shards of flying glass as they watched the fire from their windows. The city's infrastructure collapsed. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and many were damaged themselves. Communication lines were down. Halifax was cut off from the world. And then, as if the universe itself was conspiring against the city, a blizzard hit the very next day. It buried the ruins in a thick blanket of snow, hampering rescue efforts and adding to the suffering of the thousands left homeless and injured in the freezing cold. Rescuers dug through snow-covered debris, desperately searching for survivors, their grim work made nearly impossible by the weather. But in the face of this apocalyptic scene, humanity shone through. Aid began to pour in almost immediately. The first help came from nearby towns in Nova Scotia and the neighboring province of New Brunswick. But the most significant and immediate assistance came from Boston. The governor of Massachusetts organized a relief train loaded with doctors, nurses, and medical supplies. It battled the blizzard, arriving in the devastated city to provide critical aid. This act of kindness forged an unbreakable bond between Halifax and Boston. To this day, every year, Nova Scotia sends a massive Christmas tree to the city of Boston as a thank you, a tradition that has lasted for over a century. The aftermath of the explosion was a long and painful road to recovery. The city had to be rebuilt from the ground up. An official inquiry was launched, and after much finger-pointing, the captain and pilot of the Mont Blanc, along with the naval officer in charge of the harbor, were initially blamed. However, the charges were later dropped, and the final inquiry concluded that mistakes were made on both ships. The Halifax explosion left a permanent scar on the city, but it also led to important changes. It prompted a complete overhaul of harbor regulations and the handling of dangerous goods in ports around the world. The medical response to the disaster, particularly the treatment of eye injuries, advanced the field of ophthalmology. The sheer scale of the event provided invaluable, albeit tragic, data on the effects of large-scale explosions, which was later studied during the development of atomic weapons. Today, if you visit Halifax, you can still find reminders of that terrible day. The Memorial Bell Tower in Fort Needham Park overlooks the site of the blast, its bells tolling each year on December 6. You can see the twisted remains of the Mont Blanc's anchor shank. These memorials serve as a solemn tribute to the lives lost and the resilience of a city that was brought to its knees but refused to be broken. The story of the Halifax explosion is a harrowing tale of war, human error, and unimaginable destruction. But it's also a powerful story of heroism, survival, and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of utter devastation. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most impactful moments.